This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Well, hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Vincent Tolman, a man who died over 20 years ago, and I'll just let that sink in for a moment. In January of 2003, Vincent was found dead in the bathroom of a small restaurant, and he had been dead for over half an hour, but the rest really is his story to tell. And here to tell it is Vincent Tolman. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Vincent.
Hey, thanks for having me, and if you want, you can call me Vinnie. Usually Vincent's when I'm in trouble, so you can call me Vinnie if you want.
I will call you Vinnie, and I won't call you Vinnie Vincent, who was a brief guitarist for Kiss before forming his own band, I think, at some point during the 80s, but that's my useless knowledge coming into play here. I know we're gonna talk extensively about your book, The Light After Death: My Journey to Heaven and Back. But before we do, Vinnie, I want to ask you the question I ask everybody as we begin, which is, where does your story begin?
You know, my story begins with my birth, but since then, the big story, the current story that we're talking about today, it starts back in 2003. And give you a little snapshot of who I was back in 2003. I was a home builder. I built homes, and I part-timed. I moonlighted in TV and film as a producer, helping to produce TV shows and film. And, you know, it was a lot of fun. I was 25 years old. I was living what I thought was like the good life, you know. At the same time, I was very motivated by money and looks and imagery and experiences, but not so much about relationships and family. And that's where I was when I had my experience where I died. And I was an amateur bodybuilder. It was kind of a part-time thing I did. I would work out every day, and we found a new supplement. This new supplement at the time was so popular locally that you couldn't get it at any of the shops. The GNCs, the vitamin shops, they were all sold out. So many of us were going online to find the same supplement. But what we didn't realize, and not just myself, but many of us, is the stuff you were buying online was a pure solution, and what you were getting in the shops in the United States was a 5% solution with 95% water added. So, you know, it was very strong overseas, whereas the stuff in the United States, extremely weak. Now, we took the regular dosage with the concentrate, and me and one of my best friends, we both took this. Instantly, we knew something was off. It tasted the same, but of course stronger, but we knew it was off. There was just very different. And we started to feel sick right away, started to feel coldness coming over our abdomen and our legs. They started to feel cold. So we figured, you know what, let's go get something to eat down the street at a Dairy Queen, and that's going to make us feel a lot better. We go down there to the Dairy Queen. We barely make it there. I had to shake my buddy, keep him awake as we pulled up. He was driving. I ran. As soon as he put it in park, I ran into the bathroom and locked the door. I felt that I was going to vomit, so I just went in there, and out of habit, I locked that door because it was a single-use bathroom. There, I passed out, and I began to actually vomit while I was on my back. And so I aspirated. I ended up suffocating on my own vomit, and that's what ended up killing me. And I was dead there for about 45 minutes to an hour. Minimum, at least, before they found me. And then my buddy, meanwhile, he goes in right after me. He collapses on a booth. He vomits there. They call 911. They get an ambulance there, and they take him away. But nobody knows there's another one of us in the bathroom.
Oh my
so,
gosh.
you know, 45 minutes go by past after the time he was already taken away. And there I was found dead when they opened that bathroom.
So, just a couple thoughts here. Or just follow-up questions. Number one, a little bit more lighthearted than what number two will be, but why Dairy Queen? It sounds like you guys are.
It was the closest place. It was the closest place. Yeah, and you know what? Now rewind time again. Back in 2003, that Dairy Queen was less processed and more like originally what it was, But that aside, it was the closest restaurant to where we lived. Literally, there was not a closer restaurant, so that's where we decided to go.
Got it. And you mentioned kind of, but during this period of time in your life, you're kind of into bodybuilding, you're into looks, you're into money. What how would you characterize your life at that point in time, and kind of how you were feeling at that point in time?
I feel I was a good person. I still would do good things for people and care for people, but I still I had this selfish side of me that I was always looking to see what I would gain out of what came next, what project I'd pick up for TV or film, or, would it look good on the resume or not? How much I would get out of my next contract for building. It was very much an egocentric type life. It was. Mm-hmm. And I don't live that way anymore. I still live within this world, but I try not to live of this world. I try to live of the knowing of what's really important. And I learned what was really important with my experience of dying.
And how would you characterize at that point in time, sort of, before we move on to what happened, sort of after the bathroom? How would you characterize your personal relationships?
I had a lot of, long-term relationships with friends, like very close friends, but I didn't have very many actual close relationships. Like I had so many thousands of quote unquote friends that would want to go do things, want to kind of use me so they could do whatever they wanted in their life, get what they wanted out of life. I had a ton of girlfriends just everywhere, and I lived that life. That life was this fruit to be picked and to savor and get everything you could out of it. And I was right in one way, but so wrong in the way I was doing it. I was using people so much and not utilizing their true value and their true energy. Yeah.
So let's pick it up from you sort of aspirating on the floor of the bathroom. How did they find you?
Well, there was a customer in the Dairy Queen there that kept trying to use the bathroom, and the door was locked for like 45 minutes. So finally, he goes to the manager and says, "Hey, I think somebody's having some major problems in there because they've been there a long time. So you need to check this out." So the manager goes over there, he pounds on the door, nobody answers, but he can hear a phone ringing inside the bathroom. So he also feels, oh crap, something's going on here. He unlocks that door, and sure enough, dead guy on the ground, phone off to the side, and it's constantly ringing. So he's like, oh great, now we've got another one. So they call 911 for a second time that day, and this time 911 is actually walking them through the process of, hey, this is what you do, feel for a pulse. And he wasn't doing it himself. He actually got his little gal that was his helper at the restaurant. She's like 16, 17. He made her, he's like, hey, put your hand on his neck, see if you can feel a pulse. And so she did, and as she touched the neck, she cringed back, and she's like, he's cold. He's cold. And as soon as the operator heard that over the phone, she goes, secure the room, don't touch the body, wait till the medical services get there, they'll know what to do. And it was only a couple of minutes later, maybe 5 minutes later, an ambulance got there. And I'm watching all of this happen from above, by the way, which is crazy. But I was watching everything from above. And I'm watching and hearing all these emotions in everyone, even the girl, as she tried to touch the body and felt it was so gross and cold. The medics get there, and it's a team of 3 medics, 2 veterans, and 1 rookie. The rookie was sitting in the back of the ambulance. So they get there. They attempt some chest compressions. They tried to pump some air into the lungs with this manual pump. Nothing was doing anything for the body. They did pronounce it dead. They put it in a body bag. They loaded it in the back of the ambulance, and then they began to get statements from everybody. So they got statements from the manager, from the gal who touched the body, from even one of the customers. They got a statement from. They signed all the paperwork. That took like 20, 30 minutes by itself. And then they pulled away from the scene. This whole time, though, the rookie is sitting back there in the back of the ambulance as they're doing paperwork and all this other stuff. He's sitting back there just talking to himself and feeling horrible that they They didn't try harder for this one. He felt that he wanted to do more. He really wanted to do more. Well, they pull away from this scene, and he feels this prompting that this one's not dead. And he kind of shrugs it off. And then it comes again, but it comes way stronger. And the second time it came to him, I heard it. It was very strong. It even had all this light around the prompting itself. And when he heard it the second time, he instantly reacted, and he unzipped the body bag. He had to undo some straps even to unzip the body bag all the way so he could feel around for a pulse. And after doing that, he didn't feel any pulse, but he went ahead and went to the inner groin. Down there, there's a large artery that they try to feel for. Well, in doing so, he felt a spark or a shock, like an electrical shock. And that was enough for him. It was enough sign for him that he wanted to go ahead and just break all protocol. I'm going to try to work on this one. So he did. He went forward and attempted resuscitation. After 3 rounds of shock to the heart, he was able to get the heart to come back. And it was a steady, but faint, but it was steady heartbeat, consistent. And part of the miracle, the second miracle, first miracle is him following his prompting. The second miracle is that when that heart started, the body was a half block away from a hospital. And inside that hospital, they had all sorts of teams ready to meet this body. And they were bored. They didn't have a lot of patience. So they were waiting and anticipating, let's work on this guy. Let's get all the specialties here. Let's get him right. Let's get him well. And thus began the process of trying to bring this dead guy back to life. And I was brain dead. I was brain dead for 3 days. So I was in a coma for 3 days. And that was my time to go. I got to go to heaven during that part. And it's not this place that we think of as what the movies have taught us heaven is. It's very, very different than what we've ever been taught.
Yeah, I want to definitely talk more about that. But, out of curiosity, the crew that came to pick you up, was that the same crew that got your friend or a different crew?
No, a different crew. Yeah, that other crew had turned him into the same hospital. But they had just pulled away from that hospital from turning him in. So they were there for a good, 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour of just turning him in. And they were pulling away right as my ambulance pulled in to start, turning me over to the ER.
Yeah. So there's, and we'll come back to it at the end of this, but certainly a reason why you got the crew you got.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
But let's talk about kind of what happened during those 3 days, which, of course, is a significant number in Christian history. But
I know.
Talk to me about sort of what you were experiencing and what your journey was, when you had left the earth.
Well, this all happened January 18th. That's when I died and was revived. But I woke up on the 21st, which was 3 days later. And during that period, I went on this journey. The first thing I noticed, once I consciously decided to turn away from my body, I knew I didn't want any more of this, that it looked like so much pain. The body was going through all sorts of seizures, and there was foaming coming out of the mouth, all sorts of junk coming out of the body. I knew I didn't want any of that. And so I turned away from that, and I chose to look away or turn away. And as I did, I recognized that there was this loving presence, this loving being that was standing right there, like had already been there. And the first instinct I thought was, "You're God." And because it's this white gentleman, long white beard, long white hair. And I'm like, "Oh, this is God," And he just laughed. He's like, "No, I'm not God." He said that, "I'm your guide. My name is Drake, and I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you go wherever you want to go. I can help you go back to your body, or I can help you go anywhere you'd like to go in the universe." And I told him, I said, "Well, whatever this energy, this feeling I'm getting from you, I want to go where that is. Can I go where that is?" And he helped me understand that was my home. That was where I originally came from, and that I could go back there, and he'd love to take me there. So we began our journey to go from Earth to this low reality or dimension, however you want to call it, up to this very high dimension of heaven, and this very high frequency, very high love space, high vibrational space. And in doing so, it wasn't just this journey of, hey, let's hop on the the magical energy of this guy and go up to heaven. I had to actually learn some things and embody some principles for me to even keep up with him. So every time I would start to slow down my progress, it meant that I wasn't fully embracing what he was teaching me. Then I would have to learn something better, do something better, and then I could keep up with him. And that's what the whole journey was. And most of those 3 days, I wish I could say I went straight into heaven and I got 3 days in heaven. But I'd say I got 2 3/4 days of journey, and then about a quarter of a day in heaven is what I got. And which is opposite of what I would have believed, because I was raised evangelical Christian. So being raised that, I pulled out my Christian card and I say, hey, I already know everything. I've been saved. I've been baptized. I've taken Christ on as my personal savior. So I can get right in. Just show me where to go. I'll get right into heaven. And he just laughed at that. He thought that was hilarious, that I thought that just having that just got me right into heaven. It's not just that. And taking the Christ upon me is not just taking a guy's name upon me, that it was actually, I had to embody the Christ, the anointing, the anointment, the selfless, loving being that Christ was. I had to take that on of who I was before I could get in. And it wouldn't matter my religion, as long as I took that essence, that Christ consciousness on me, I could go there. And that was kind of hard for me, even being raised Christian, because I'd lived such an egocentric life, almost a opposite of Christ, very ego-serving and self-serving life. And Christ lived opposite of that. So I had quite a bit of learning to do, and it took me so long because I took the short bus to heaven. I had to really learn some things, and so I did. I learned these 10 major principles. And I didn't even know it was 10 principles until we wrote the story down, and we realized there's 10 very distinct principles that I learned as I made my journey, and so we call it our 10 principles.
So I do want to talk about the 10 principles, and I'm just going to ask everyone in the audience who could be thinking to themselves, Mike, who is this guy? Like, this is so different from a lot of the other stories that I get to uncork. But I'll just ask everybody who's listening in to kind of listen in with an open mind and an open heart, because these 10 principles, once you hear them, to me they make a lot of sense, and I know where this is going because I read the book. But let's start off there, Vinnie. What is the first principle that you learned?
So it's funny, everyone thinks, the first principle is probably love, right? And no, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. Before we can actually feel or share love, we have to be authentic. And the reason we have to be authentic is, as we're not authentic, we're building up a false self or a false version of ourself outside of ourself. And that self can't feel love. It can't. The only self that can feel love is the authentic self, the inside self. That's why little kids can feel love and very old people can feel love, because they're both very authentic. Whereas all of us in-betweeners, us that are over 5 years old, over 6 years old, all the way up till we're not 80 yet, we're not that authentic. But as we get into our 80s, we don't care. We're going to be us, no matter whether that makes you happy or sad. We're us, right? And that's the authenticity that we need to have our entire life. And that was the first principle, is learning how to peel away all the imperfections, all these personas that I allowed to grow up around me. And my guide Drake helped me understand that the reason that I allowed a falseness to grow up is because I felt a vulnerability there. And really, it's our vulnerability that allows us to grow. So if I hide the vulnerability, I'm not allowing the opportunity to grow. So I need to expose and bring out the vulnerability and embrace my vulnerability. And in that space, I'm authentic and I can grow. So he essentially had to tear me down to build me up in real terms. He had to tear away and peel away all these false senses of who I was. I had a personality of the movie producer or production assistant or the home builder or the computer technician or the sales guy or the all these different personalities of who I was. He peeled them all away. He took off all these extra layers of onion off of me. And inside there was this soft, pink, squishy essence of who I really was. And very vulnerable. But man, how I could feel love there. Man, how I could heal there. And that was the principle I had to first embrace, was vulnerability, authenticity, being truly authentic through my vulnerabilities, not trying to hide them. And in that space, I could feel, I could love.
And I'll just, add to that. I mean, this is, that lesson is what we pay hundreds of dollars, sometimes weekly to therapists to tell us. Yeah. And I've been to a few, and, that's one of the first lessons you learn is, number one, you've got to love yourself before you can really feel the love of someone else or give your love to somebody else. But also part of that is addressing those vulnerabilities you have, being comfortable with those vulnerabilities. And I talk about it all the time with writers. If you want to write honestly, you've got to be vulnerable. So vulnerability is a huge part of sort of living authentically. What are some tips? Do you have any tips to help us live more authentically? I really
notice this, recognize who you are around children, because typically that's our most authentic self. Allow yourself to be the way you are around, 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. Allow that self to be out in the real world for one day. Just try it one day. And you'll be really surprised the weird looks you get, but also the smiles and sometimes the hugs you get from people, because that authenticity, especially for us in-betweeners, for us, over 5 and under 80, for those of us in-betweeners, when we're being authentic, we're rare. We are rare. And when we're showing our authentic self, people react so awesome to us. And I'll tell you, you can see the authentic people out there. Most of them are major leaders in this world, major leaders in society, in good ways, not in politics. That's where the failures go. All the people that fail at this, they go to politics. They dive into one of these false senses of themselves, and they go into politics. But our real leaders are our clergy, our philosophical leaders, our spirit leaders, our brain and quantum physicists who are leading the edge of things. They're very authentic and in the way they are as well. So it's important for us to embody that, and that is what brought me to the next principle, which was to understand the purpose of life, and that's part of the purpose. Is we can grow when we're authentic, and when we're not authentic, we can't grow. So you're wasting your time, you're wasting your space to be not authentic. So allow that authenticity, and then understand that the reason we're here is to grow, that Earth life is a classroom and not a courtroom. We're here to learn to make choices, learn to use our magic wand of thinking to create or to tear down. It's our choice, but to actively engage our choices, our free agency, to see how we create or destroy. That's what's important for us to do here, is to actually create and build and use that love energy that we know is a good thing. When we're authentic, we know love is a good thing. Use that energy to build and to create. And in doing so, we can change the world. We can change not just our world, but the whole world, the outside world and the inside world. We can change it all. So it's quite profound to understand that.
Yeah, so I had an author on, a couple of months ago, and we were talking about a light topic, like the meaning of life. And, he said, oftentimes people think the meaning of life is to be happy. And the meaning of life isn't to be happy. That could be an outcome of it, but it's not the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to grow. And we are here to grow and to learn. And I love this notion of sort of this, plane of existence being a classroom and not a courtroom, because I think so many of us, grow up with this belief system that, we're here, there's going to be a judgment. We are being judged constantly. And in many ways, I think organized religion, does kind of communicate that somewhat. I mean, I want to say, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush here, but more to keep us in line versus, versus other things. But I really like that notion that we're in a classroom and not a courtroom.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. We're here to to build relationships, because that's what we get to carry with us. We don't get to carry our career with us. We don't even get to carry our degrees with us. We don't get to carry our jewelry. We don't get to carry our cars or even our car keys. All we get to carry with us is our relationships. That's what we get to carry with us. So why do we pour so much attention into all those other things and so little attention into the relationships? And that's because we've gotten off course. We've allowed distraction to take us off course. And that's something that I had to die to learn how to live. I died to recognize that relationships are the most important things we have on this planet. And is it all relationships? No, but we can strive to honor, love, and respect all relationships we have. We can strive to. Is it going to be perfect from both ways? No, but we can strive, and we can try. That's essentially the most important aspect of why we're here is to truly love everyone. And that's the third principle is, that's one of the purposes of getting here, is to learn how to love everyone. And the hardest part for me was to love the unlovable, the ones who don't want love and hate me and hate everyone, to even love them. And it reminds me of my daughter when she was little. She was playing with these dogs on the other side of the fence, and they were trying to attack her. And she comes up and she grabs my hand. She says, Daddy, come look at these cute little bad dogs. And it's like, that's how we need to be. We need to just love, even when someone's actively attacking and wanting to get you. Just love through that and see the cuteness there. See the cute nature, the loving nature, the divine nature that's there. And it is there if you look. If you really look, you'll be able to see the divine nature in all beings, both animal and human. I know that us humans are sometimes the worst animals, but you can find it if you look. You look deep enough. There's a divine nature there. You might have to look real deep, but you'll find it.
You talk in your book about frequencies and getting our frequencies aligned, and you also talk about the concept of a spiritual antenna. I just wondered if you could spend a moment just talking about what you mean when you say frequencies. How can we tune our frequencies? I think of frequencies. I think of tuning an old radio. But how can we sort of I don't want to say manipulate. That's got a terrible connotation to it. But how can we tune our frequencies, and what is this spiritual antenna?
We could call it organize, right? We could organize or orchestrate our energy. If you talk to a quantum physicist or any type of quantum biologist or any other thing at the quantum level, you ask them what's going on in the atom. When you look at the atom, the atomic structure of the human, what's going on there? You see a consistent movement or motion there. So when you're looking at the atom, that actual motion is your frequency. And what's really weird is you can take blood cells, you can take DNA from a human, take it off of them, put it in a microscope, and go put that person, that human, in a loving, safe space, a space where they really feel love, and you'll actually see that atomic structure raise and get higher to a higher vibration. Literally, that atom starts going crazy. And at the same rate, and this is when they're separate from each other by miles. They can be states away, and you get the exact syncopation between the separate cell that you took away and the actual being. And you can do that with fear as well. There's actual triple blind studies to this, where they can see the blood cells reacting the way they do to fear and to disease and to viruses, just by emotions, states away. And that's how we are. We are part of what's called quantum entanglement. That means that we are all energy, and we're all individual energies, liquid flowing energies in the fabric of life, and we're threaded in and out of each other in this life. And as we can raise our love frequency, we can start vibrating at this higher love frequency. We're not just raising us, we're raising everything around us. And that's the beauty about it. If we can get near those who are already raising their frequency, it raises our frequency. And that's what it's all about. And how do we raise our frequency? We make choices. Every choice we make every day, the food we put in our bodies, the social media we look at, the people we follow on social media, the entertainment we allow in our eyes, in our ears, that is energy we consume. And every one of these choices will either raise or lower our love frequency. And that's as simple as it is. Every choice, even the food we eat, how we eat it, if we bless it or we don't bless it, all of these things are choices that we have where we get to create our reality. We get to create who we are and what we are and the results. And it begins with the ability to choose good, to choose high frequency or love frequency as we make these choices. Now, as you're going about your day and you're like, you know what, this choice isn't going to affect my love frequency. It is. The fact that you don't distinctly detect a raise, it is a lower. Because just like the bird that's coasting, when you're coasting, you're slowly going down. And that's what that decision is doing. If it's not a good or a bad, it's a coast. You're coasting, so you're coasting lower. And that's what it's all about. And it's not a complex system. The system of life isn't so complex. It is complex, but it's not. It's very basic and very simple. Make distinct choices. Don't react to things. Don't let life choose you. You choose life. You choose what goes on in your life. Don't let life bully you and abuse you and distract you constantly, because that's what it's doing. And it's unfortunately our content here, our social media and our internet and our phones, it's constantly distracting. Just in the time that I started this, I guarantee you I have probably 35 to 40 notifications. That's what's constantly going on for you. So if there is a battle being waged, and if they can keep you distracted long enough that you lower your frequency low enough, now you're in their hands. You're in the fear hands. You're in the hands of powers that want that. There is almost an imprisonment going on there that will keep you at that low frequency. And yeah, it's very powerful.
So just reflecting on something, I'm just going to nerd out for a minute.
I love it. I love nerding out.
So, you mentioned kind of we are all energy, right? You were talking about sort of the atomic structure, and you could witness this. It's observable. Mm-hmm. We also know through science, through the, I think it was the first law of thermodynamics, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Mm-hmm. And this is going through my head because, even though you are dead at this point, you are not, you're not gone. So your energy is somewhere else.
Yes.
Am I thinking along the right
Absolutely.
lines here?
You're right there. In fact, science is behind you with that thought. Since we're nerding out, we'll go there. They've actually now given an atomic weight to the soul because they can weigh the body, the atomic weight of the body, while it's alive, right before death, and then right after death. And there's an actual number there, and everybody's is a little bit different, but the generalized number is very close to the same, no matter how many subjects they did this to. So there is a scientific proof that something leaves the body in death, and that energy, no matter what you want to call it, it doesn't change that it exists, and that energy is the soul, the consciousness, the higher self. The sliver of your consciousness, if you want to call it that, but who it is, it's us. It's us. I kept going, and to me was up here watching everything. Me was not down there in that body. Me was up here. I felt like I stepped away from a vehicle. The same way you inside of a vehicle is not you. You is the driver of the vehicle. These physical bodies are the vehicles. Us, who we really are, we're these spiritual, eternal beings. We lived forever before this. We're going to live forever after this, which is hard to comprehend, by the way. But we get to jump into these meat suits for 50 to 80, maybe 100 and some odd years, depending on our life path. And then we step away, just like when we're done driving the car. We shut the door, we walk away. We don't look at the car and say, hey, that's Vinnie, or that's Susie or whoever. We say, well, that's just an empty car. And that's what these carcasses are, is just an empty shell that we get to use while we're here.
So I don't want to spend too much more time talking about each of these lessons you learned, like specifically in order, because I do want people to buy this book, and I don't want to give the ending away. but I do have some specific questions for you because I think two of the things that you said really resonated with a lot of the things that you said in the book really resonated with me. I'll just list a few of them. First one being that the only way to grow stronger is to face resistance. Living on Earth as kind of a way of explaining, maybe why bad things happen, or sort of why everything isn't, always easy. And to me, this is kind of very much in line with, thinking about you as sort of an amateur bodybuilder, facing resistance with weight to get your body stronger. We're talking about this, though, on maybe more of a spiritual level. Just talk to me a little bit more about that, this idea of facing resistance here while we're on Earth.
Well, the whole reason we had to come here is because when we were in heaven, our home, every time the Creator wanted or desired anything, we wanted or desired that exact thing. Because we were so connected and so in love with our Creator, we were so permeated by that love of Creator that everything the Creator wanted, we wanted. And the same way a kid that grows up real close to its parents, the kid's not going to really technically grow up until the kid moves away. So we were the kids that we had to move away. We had to go out to college, and our college is called Earth. And it is just that. It's just a school. It's for us to go get what we need for what we want. And, some of us are just biding time. Those are the guys going to all the frat parties and never showing up to class. Some of us are showing up to class and we're eager and we're learning. And we're so focused on learning, we're missing all the lessons. We're missing the life lessons that you get from college. Then there's the in-betweeners. That's most of us. We can really learn from our experience, our college experience here on Earth. We can learn from the frat guys. We can learn from the studiers. We can learn from the straight A's. We can learn from the flunkies. We can be that C student and still get an A in heaven, because we're learning all the life lessons. Because the real lesson is to learn how to care, how to love, how to create with our thoughts and our choices. Yeah.
Another thing you mentioned that really spoke to me, and I was thinking about this. A friend of mine who lost a son who was, very young. He had an infection, and he passed away very suddenly. I think he was like 7 or 8 years old.
Wow.
And I know how much of a struggle it's been for him, and it's been many years since that happened. But you mentioned in the book, those who are on Earth for a brief time receive everything they need from mortality, and at the same time play a part in the struggle and growth of those who remain. So I'm thinking about this boy who passed away, and then his parents and his brother, who kind of were left behind and to deal with that grief. Kind of a beautiful way of thinking about it, and sort of bringing us, a little bit of comfort in the face of such great tragedy. But I'm curious if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Well, I have a specific message for them, for those people, your friends that lost that amazing child that crossed so early, and it hurts me when I hear about that stuff, because that's the hardest thing for a family. I'm a father myself, and even knowing what I know that would be tremendously hard. But I'll tell you what I learned from my experience is there's a special place. I saw it. I saw this part of heaven where families that had that early loss, whether it was a miscarriage, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, or the kidnapping, murder type situations, or, losing a child to a disease at a very young age. There's a very precious place in heaven where they get to go and they get to live out everything they feel they missed. And it's so cool. It's so awesome. And it's so it makes up for this. It makes up for it. We suffer through these losses and we're like, why, God? Why do you hate me? And if we could only see that God doesn't hate us, he's already provided this whole special area for us, that when we go there, we can go back and we can literally have every experience we wanted to have. Every experience. Sorry.
No.
Even letting our kids go to the high school dance, or seeing them graduate or get married, we get to have all that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds beautiful, and I can understand why you're kind of brought to tears just recalling it. One more thing before and I know we have to wrap up, and I could really go on with this conversation.
Yeah, we could talk for hours.
Yeah. So, one thing I wanted to talk about, which is technology and sort of like the messages, and I think this kind of goes along with living authentically as well. One of the things that drives me a little insane going on social media, particularly because I see how it affects my children. I have 3 20-year-olds. We have triplets, and they grew up with basically screens in their hand. Mm-hmm. Is seeing how people, are posting this, version of their lives, which is completely untrue on social media. Like everything is always happy. My life is great. And one thing that you mentioned is that by doing so, even though they're not necessarily spreading a negative message per se, they could be leaving others feeling jealous and dissatisfied with their own lives, through this sort of inauthentic, views of or postings of others. I just wanted to kind of just talk about that a little bit, because you do talk about technology and being careful with technology as one of the lessons you learned. And I just wondered if you could spend a couple moments talking about that.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the greatest takeaways that I have from my experience is understanding a positive relationship with technology. And part of that is understanding that as we only allow the positive experiences to be on social media, we are creating this false narrative that only good things happen to people. And here's what's sad about social media. People dive into it when they're feeling their worst. You don't dive into social media when you're out having a grand vacation and having a grand time. That's when you snap a picture here and there, but you're not diving into it looking at anybody else's. You're creating your own, right? And it's sad because when do we do it? It's because we're feeling bad, we're sick, we're not feeling our best, we're struggling with work, we're struggling with our home life. That's when we're diving into social media. So we're seeing all these perfect lives on there, and we don't see that they have bad days too. And to me, it's just as important to post a bad day as it is a good day. And there's very few people that do that. Mostly it's thought leaders, it's life coaches, that kind of those kind of people that do that. They post the good days and the bad days. They're always posting the lessons they learned from the good day and the bad day. And I love that. I love the authentic nature to that. In that way, you're using social media in a good way, the way you post. But to only post positive things and pretty pictures and touched up pictures, don't do that. That's one of your false personas. That's one of your false realities. And who you are is not that. Unless you can live in a virtual world where you can always be touching up everything, that's not you. So lean away from that. Do that once in a while just for fun. But don't think that's the norm. Because once that becomes the norm, that's when you hear the stories of someone getting banned from Instagram and they go and they kill themselves. Because they felt their whole value of who they were was their profile and their followers. And that's not a value. I guarantee you, if the chips are down and you're having a bad time in your life, your followers are not going to come and make your bed and clean your house and make you food. Those are only your real friends that would do that. And probably they don't follow you on Instagram or whatever. So use social media in a healthy way. I was taught a principle called the hour of power. So, really treat the first 30 minutes when you wake up and the last 30 minutes before you go to bed. Treat that as holy space, as Shabbat, as the sacred space. Treat that as your sacred space. Only allow in that space God or meditation or walking or serving others, caring for others. Do something positive in that hour of power, and you will change everything. Because even if you're diving into social media and to work and all these other things, when you're honoring your hour of power, you're keeping the right perspective on everything. And yeah, there we go.
Yeah. I'd love to just do a pre-post, because obviously you didn't remain in heaven. You did come back. I know we talked about sort of the Vinnie who was, right before he wound up on that bathroom floor and Dairy Queen, kind of living more for himself. Perhaps you didn't say the word selfishly. I'm going to use that. I'm going to.
Oh yeah, I was selfish for sure.
But how would you compare and contrast your life now versus then?
I would try to say that I'm not selfish. I still am human though, so there's some selfish nature to me. But I'll tell you, I really love to serve others. My wife, my daughter, my son would attest to you to that. That I do love to serve others. Everything I do, I love to serve others. I actually do a coaching program to help people embody their own light, and that to me is my ministry. That's my purpose here. And I do that in kind of a miniature form in my experience, but I also do that in the real world form where I actually work with CEOs and people from all over the world to really help them embody their light, because everybody needs that light. I help everybody that I can and do that. So yeah, it's different now for sure. And one of the coolest things about my experience is later I found out who my guide actually is, a real guy. Like the real guy Drake, and find out he's related to me in a weird way that I would have never ever known. And I was so tremendously blessed to have that confirmation, because up until that point it was kind of a possibility of just delusion to the whole experience, because there was one neurologist that told me it was just my imagination making everything up. But my imagination couldn't make up stuff it didn't know. It couldn't pull stuff, absolute facts out of the ethers of my ancestry and bring that into my experience. So I love that I got multiple testaments of the truth of my experience through the whole process of learning to live ever since I came back.
Well, I did want to tease that because there is a proof point in the book, and when the light kind of goes off, it's a pretty amazing part of the story. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to tease for my listeners, if you do buy the book and read it, there's a great story with a psychiatrist at the end who throws you out of his office.
I pretty much scared the crap out of a head shrinker.
So we'll leave that as a tease. Vinnie, this has been a great conversation. Where can people buy The Light After Death, My Journey to Heaven and Back?
It was available at every major bookstore, but now what we're looking for is just Amazon. That's the best place. It's going to always be in stock there from now on. It did go through a little short circuit period where we were out for a bit, but we've got it full stocked and we're good to go. So Amazon, Audible, Kindle as well, so you can get it digitally. Internationally, you can get it on Audible and Kindle, and then in the United States on Amazon.
All right, and then if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about your story, or learn more about that coaching program you were talking about, do you have a website or any social media handles you want to share with us?
I do. You can just find everything there at livinggodslight.com. Again, that's just livinggodslight.com.
Okay, very good. Vinnie, this has been a great conversation. It was my pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate, Michael, all that you've done to create this forum or this place that people can raise their frequency. Even if they're doing it in baby steps or big steps, that's really a cool thing that you're doing. So thank you for what you do and for this platform that you're working on and doing. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.